Can you see someone's sexual preferences in astrology? Can you see their sexual history? Is there really a gay marker in the stars? And if so, can it be changed? And most importantly, am I going to hell for making this video? Now, to even begin to answer all of these questions, we must first understand that in the eyes of the ancient ones, the inventors of astrology, the whole question of sexual preference was quite different than the way we see it today. You see, if we take ancient Greece, for example, where homosexuality was considered at least tolerable, if not normal, the whole idea of someone saying that he is gay or straight would have been so strange they wouldn't even understand him. That is because to them there was no such thing as gay or straight. To them you could be sleeping with a man at one point and with a woman at another, and that would not dictate who you are or what is your sexual preference. In fact, the only thing it would dictate is the position you hold in society in most cases, or the sexual preferences you have at that moment. One might say that they were far more open-minded to the myriad of sexual preferences that can exist, and were far more aware of how they manifest than we are today. Now, with this in mind, it shouldn't be surprising that there are specific references to quite a few of the sexual preferences we know of today in the astrological texts and in astrology itself. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that I will be addressing all of these questions from the point of view of Vedic astrology, not of Western astrology, but Western astrology also has symbolism and references to all of these questions. Now let's start with the relatively easy one, which is homosexuality. Well, if we open the Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, which is the main text discussing Vedic astrology, you will find that there is direct reference to homosexual activity. The most prominent reference is that Venus associated with Mars symbolizes kissing the private parts of a female, and the association between Venus and Saturn would symbolize kissing the private parts of a male. And when I say association, there are certain caveats mentioned, but we will discuss them perhaps in another video. This time the focus will be just on showing how the question is addressed in astrology. Now, one might think that these combinations apply to you only if you're a male or a female, but in reality the whole text is written in such a way that it is mostly addressed to men. With that in mind, it is quite clear that yes, it is a direct reference to male homosexuality. However, one should remember that there's also a section which applies strictly to female, and it does not mention a distinction between the sexes. As such, one can reasonably assume that yes, it applies to both sexes. So, in both charts, it will mean the same thing. Now, in my own practice, I have noticed that homosexuality is often seen in a chart through the association of Rahu with Jupiter in women and of Rahu with Venus in men. In fact, I haven't yet found a single instance when this would not apply. It should be noted, however, that it is a reference to both homosexuality, as in strictly same-sex relationships, and bisexual orientation. So it applies to both. The more crucial part is that such a combination is not something that changes over time. So it is literally something you are born with, and as such it indicates that sexual preference is a fixed thing and not something that would simply change or can be changed. Now it's time to address the less pleasant parts of the whole issue, which are questions of sexual assault, rape, incest, etc. And in case you are wondering, yes, this question should be addressed because sometimes, actually often, they are far more destructive than any disease. Now, when it comes to sexual assault, the easiest way to see that in someone's chart is malefics in the 8th and malefic influence on the 12th. The 8th is of course our private parts and the house of sex, but also the 12th, which is the house of bad pleasures. Now, I should add that the whole concept of sexual assault already implies which are the planets that can be associated with such issues. The main significator to check would be of course Mars, but one shouldn't forget about Ketu, who also denotes aggressive or destructive issues. Now, when such combinations include the 5th house and the 5th house lord, this can denote child abuse. And to take matters even further, there are 3 main nakshatras associated with incest, which are Bharani, mainly sibling incest, and then Rohini and Mrigashirsha, which denote parental and offspring incest. Now, when these are afflicted, one can unfortunately expect some issues regarding the matter. Now let's move on to a lighter note. When it comes to fetishes or simple unusual sexual preferences, well, that's a far easier thing to discuss. In fact, when it comes to sexuality in general, one only needs to look at the 8th house, the 8th lord, and the associations between them and other planets and houses to see what's going on in someone's sexual life. Another factor would be the position of Venus and its association with houses and planets, because Venus is what we consider pleasurable, and as such it will also show what we consider pleasurable in bed. Now, when it comes to sex life in general, one should look at how many planets are situated in the 8th and the 12th houses. That is the best indicator one has of the sexual activity of an individual. In fact, that is the direct reference because, again, the 8th and the 12th houses are the most important ones when it comes to sex in general and sexual activity in particular. Now, just to give you a few interesting combinations, when it comes to Mars in either of these houses, well, one might expect a very active sex life, and with Venus there, one can expect quite a bit of sexual pleasure, but If Venus is too strong, there might be some reason for concern because it might denote sexual addiction. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and if you wish to learn more about astrology, please check out my website. You will find the link below. Thank you.